Lesson 10, Estate Administration and Address Structuring for Sovereignty. Welcome back, Royals. Today's lesson is about operating in commerce without being controlled by it. Specifically, how to properly structure your estate and mailing location to separate your private living status from your public legal fiction legis. What this lesson will teach you: why the post office, not your residence, is the office of your estate; how address structuring determines whether you are treated as a corporate entity or a sovereign private individual; how to prevent government agencies, banks, and courts from assuming jurisdiction over your estate. Most people unknowingly classify themselves as U.S. citizens under government jurisdiction simply by how they structure their address on legal documents. Today, we're correcting that mistake. Let's get into it. The office of the estate, the post office, not your residence. One of the biggest misconceptions people have is that their home address is their legal business location. Your estate is a legal entity that must be properly administered. Your home is your private dwelling. It should not be used as your official estate or trust mailing address. The true location of your estate's legal operations is the post office. Why this matters: when you list your home address as your official mailing location, you are allowing courts, agencies, and creditors to assume jurisdiction over your estate. This presumption makes you an absentee administrator, which means the system will step in and manage your estate for you. By establishing an independent, properly structured mailing location, you take back control over your estate and how third parties interact with you. Example: a bank, government agency, or creditor sends you a letter to your home address. By accepting it at that address, you are confirming that you are within their jurisdiction as a resident, rather than a sovereign administrator. This small detail can be used against you in legal and financial matters. Solution: the post office should be the central hub for your estate's legal correspondence. How public and private entities are classified based on address structure. Most people unknowingly mix their private and public statuses by how they structure their address. Let's break this down. A. ENS Legis, corporate fiction, uses a P.O. box. What is ENS Legis? The all-caps name, e.g. John Doe, is a corporate entity separate from the living man or woman. It was created by the government to interact with the commercial system. If you receive mail under this name, it should be directed to a P.O. box to keep it separate from your private estate. Proper address structure for ENS Legis: P.O. Box 123, city, state, zip code. Why this matters: using a P.O. box keeps commercial and corporate-related mail tied to the fictional entity, separating it from your private affairs. This reduces the ability of government agencies, banks, and courts to assume jurisdiction over your private estate. B. Living man, woman, trust, and ministry uses a post office physical address. If you are operating as a sovereign individual, your estate, trust, or ministry should use a physical post office address, not a residential address or P.O. box. Proper address structure for private estate and trusts: CO your name, 123 Sovereign Street, Suite 4567, City, State, Republic, non-domestic, without the United States. Breaking this down: CO, care of, removes legal association with government-defined residency. Full spellings of state, city, and street prevent automatic corporate jurisdiction. Bracketing the zip code ensures it is not presumed to be under federal U.S. jurisdiction. The phrase non-domestic without the United States reinforces your private status. Why this matters: this address structure prevents your estate from being classified under corporate U.S. jurisdiction. It ensures that financial institutions, government agencies, and courts must recognize your private status. This is how you separate yourself from the U.S. corporate system while still being able to operate in commerce. Hash, coming up next. Why address structure determines jurisdiction. How courts and financial institutions assume control over you based on your address. How to prevent being misclassified as a U.S. citizen when handling financial matters. How to protect your state from state and federal obligations. Final thoughts: you must take control over your estate. Your mailing address is more than just a location. It determines how the system classifies you. If you mix your public and private statuses, you are unknowingly placing yourself under jurisdictional control. Understanding these concepts allows you to operate lawfully in commerce while maintaining your sovereignty. Stay tuned for Part 2, where we break down how jurisdiction is assumed over you based on your address structure and how to correct it. Lesson 10, Estate Administration and Address Structuring for Sovereignty, Part 2. Now that we've covered why your estate's official mailing location should be the post office, not your home, let's go deeper into how address structuring determines your legal and financial jurisdiction. Most people unknowingly classify themselves as U.S. citizens under federal and state jurisdiction simply by how they structure their address on legal documents. In this part of the lesson, we will break down how courts, financial institutions, and government agencies assume jurisdiction based on your address, how using the wrong address structure automatically subjects you to U.S. corporate law, how to properly format your address to maintain sovereignty in legal and financial matters. Let's get into it. How jurisdiction is assumed over you based on your address. The moment you list your home address on any legal or financial document, you are voluntarily placing yourself under state and federal jurisdiction. The government and financial institutions treat your residential address as proof that you are a U.S. citizen, subject to statutes, taxes, and regulatory oversight. This applies to court cases, credit applications, tax filings, and contracts. Even if you don't intend to give them jurisdiction, your address alone can be used to justify their control over your estate. Example: if you receive a court summons, traffic ticket, or tax bill addressed to your home, you have already been assumed to be under jurisdiction. If you respond without correcting your address or legal standing, you confirm their authority over you. Once they have jurisdiction, they can legally enforce debts, fines, and court rulings against you. Solution: always separate your private estate from your personal residence by using a properly structured mailing location. How address structuring affects your financial status. When you apply for banking services, loans, or credit cards, your address determines whether you are classified as a corporate entity or a sovereign private estate. A standard address, 123 Main City, State, Zip, equals public jurisdiction. An address formatted to remove jurisdiction, CO your name, City, State, Republic, Zip, equals private standing. Why this matters. Banks, creditors, and agencies automatically assume that anyone with a standard U.S. residential address is under their financial jurisdiction. If you apply for a loan or open an account using a commercial address, P.O. Box, or a properly structured trust address, they cannot legally assume you are a U.S. citizen, subject to corporate regulations. This protects your estate from fraudulent financial claims, taxation, and illegal enforcement. Example of proper address structuring for financial transactions. CO John Doe, 123 Sovereign Street, Suite 4567, City, State, Republic, Zip Code, non-domestic, without the United States. This address structure forces financial institutions to recognize you as a private estate rather than a public entity. Key takeaway: your address determines how you are classified in the commercial system. If you structure it properly, you can operate lawfully in commerce while maintaining your sovereignty. How to protect your estate from state and federal obligations. Most people unknowingly obligate themselves to state and federal regulations simply by using a standard U.S. address. If your estate, trust, or private business is registered with a commercial or state-controlled address, you are automatically placed under their jurisdiction. This means your property, income, and legal standing can be controlled by the state. The IRS, courts, and financial agencies can assume control over your assets, enforce taxation, and restrict your rights. How to correct this. Establish your estate's mailing address as a non-residential post office location. Ensure all legal and financial correspondence is directed to this address, not your home. Use alternative delivery methods like general delivery to further reinforce your sovereignty. Example: if you are ever asked to confirm your address for government or financial transactions, provide your properly structured estate mailing address instead of your home. This prevents them from legally classifying you as a resident, subject to taxation and enforcement. Key takeaway: where your estate is domiciled on paper determines whether the system can legally control you. If your estate is properly structured, they have no authority over you. Coming up next, strengthening your private estate administration. How to file public notices to establish your estate's mailing location. How to use general delivery as an additional layer of protection. How to respond to government and financial agencies when asked for an address. Final thoughts: your address is more powerful than you think. How you structure your mailing address is a major factor in your legal standing. If you mix public and private addresses, you unknowingly place yourself under government jurisdiction. If you take control of your estate's mailing location, you prevent misclassification and maintain financial sovereignty. Stay tuned for Part 3, where we break down how to strengthen your private estate administration and prevent legal presumption. Part 3. Now that we've established how address structuring determines your legal and financial jurisdiction, it's time to discuss how to strengthen your estate's private administration and prevent agencies, courts, and financial institutions from assuming control over your estate. In this section, we will break down How to file public notices to lawfully establish your estate's mailing location. How general delivery can serve as an alternative to a P.O. box for the E&S Legis legal entity. How to respond to government and financial agencies when asked for your address. Let's get into it. Filing a public notice to establish your estate's mailing location. Why filing a public notice matters. Government agencies and financial institutions operate based on legal presumptions. If you do not publicly establish your estate's address structure, they will assume you are a U.S. resident operating under their jurisdiction. Filing a public notice declares your intent to separate your private estate from public classifications and provides evidence that can be used to rebut legal presumptions. How to file a public notice for your estate's address. Option 1, UCC Financing Statement, UCC 1. This is a legal filing that establishes your estate and its official mailing location. Option 2, Declaration of Address Use, a notarized affidavit declaring your estate's mailing address and its non-residential status. Option 3, Newspaper Publication, publishing a notice of address structure in a local newspaper as additional public record. These methods create a lawful record that can be referenced if a government agency, court, or financial institution ever challenges your address structure. Key takeaway: if your estate's mailing location is publicly declared, you have legal evidence to rebut jurisdictional claims against you. General delivery as an alternative to a P.O. box for the E&S Legis legal entity. What is general delivery? General delivery is a mail service offered by the U.S. Postal Service, where mail can be held for pickup at the post office instead of being delivered to a physical or P.O. box address. It allows you to receive commercial mail while keeping your private address separate from the E&S Legis legal entity. Many sovereign individuals use general delivery as a tool to prevent residency-based jurisdictional claims. How to use general delivery properly. When setting up financial, legal, or commercial accounts for the E&S Legis, all caps name, use general delivery instead of a residential or commercial address. Example address format: general delivery city, state, zip code. Why this matters? General delivery prevents institutions from attaching a permanent jurisdictional location to your person. It allows you to interact in commerce without legally establishing residency in a federal zone. It provides an added layer of privacy for those operating in the private. Key takeaway: general delivery can serve as a temporary or alternative option to a P.O. box for handling commercial and corporate-related mail. How to respond when asked for your address. Most people make the mistake of automatically giving out their home address when asked. This is how jurisdictional claims are established, by getting you to confirm residency unknowingly. The way you respond to address requests can determine whether you are seen as a private individual or a public U.S. citizen. How to respond correctly. For general inquiries, my official mailing location is established at your estate mailing address. For legal documents or court-related matters, use your properly structured estate mailing address with non-domestic, domestic, without these states included. For financial transactions, if required to provide an address, ensure it matches your publicly declared estate mailing location. What to avoid. Providing your home address unless absolutely necessary, allowing institutions to dictate how your address must be formatted, signing documents that assume a public residency classification. Key takeaway: if you control how your address is listed, you control how you are legally classified. Coming up next, final takeaways and action steps to secure your estate's mailing structure. How to audit your current address usage and make necessary changes. How to update institutions on your estate's official mailing location. How to continuously reinforce your private status in all legal and financial interactions. Final thoughts. Take back control over your estate. Where your mail is received determines how the system views you legally. If you do not establish your estate's mailing location properly, you are assumed to be a public U.S. citizen. General delivery, P.O. boxes, and properly structured estate mailing addresses all serve different roles in maintaining sovereignty. Stay tuned for Part 4, where we finalize your action steps to secure your estate's mailing structure and ensure that third parties recognize your private status. Part 4, final section. Now that we've covered how address structuring affects your legal and financial status, it's time to go over the final steps to securing your estate's mailing structure and reinforcing your private status. In this final section, we will break down how to audit your current address usage and correct any issues, how to properly update institutions with your estate's official mailing location, how to reinforce your private status in all legal and financial interactions moving forward. Let's wrap this up and put everything into action. Step 1. Audit your current address usage and make corrections. Before you can implement your new mailing structure, you need to assess where your current addresses are being used. Check all documents where you have listed your home address: government IDs, driver's license, passport, banking and financial accounts, utility bills and service providers, credit reports and loan applications, legal and court documents. Make a list of every place where you have used your residential address instead of a properly structured estate mailing location. Key takeaway: you cannot claim sovereignty if you are still using an address that places you under public jurisdiction. Your first step is identifying where changes need to be made. Step 2. Updating institutions with your estate's official mailing location. Once you have identified where your address needs to be corrected, you must update these institutions accordingly. For government agencies, use a properly structured estate mailing address whenever possible. If you must use a state-issued address, avoid using it for private contracts. For financial institutions, update banking, credit, and investment accounts with your new mailing address. Use a properly structured estate address that does not place you under jurisdiction. For legal and court-related matters, if you are required to provide an address, make sure it is formatted as a private mailing location. Include non-domestic without the United States when necessary. Key takeaway: once you correct your mailing structure, institutions will begin to recognize your private status. This protects your estate from public jurisdictional claims. Step 3. Reinforcing your private status in all legal and financial interactions. Now that your estate's mailing structure is set up, you must ensure it is consistently applied in all legal and financial matters. Never use your home address for contracts, agreements, or applications. When signing documents, always use your properly structured mailing location. If an institution challenges your address, refer them to your public notice filing, UCC-1, affidavit, or declaration of address use. Additional strategies to maintain your private standing. Use conditional acceptance, CFD, when institutions demand personal information that compromises your private status. Continue to study trust law, UCC filings, and private contract strategies to protect your estate. If necessary, seek legal guidance from professionals who specialize in private estate administration. Key takeaway: sovereignty is not just about filing paperwork, it's about consistently applying the knowledge to maintain your independence. Final takeaways: securing your estate's mailing structure. 1. Your estate's official mailing location is not your home. It should be structured to prevent jurisdictional claims. 2. General delivery is a valid alternative to a P.O. box for handling ES Legis legal entity correspondence. 3. Filing a public notice, UCC-1, affidavit, or newspaper declaration legally establishes your estate's mailing location. 4. Updating your address with institutions ensures that you are no longer assumed to be under public jurisdiction. 5. Reinforcing your private status in all contracts, financial transactions, and legal matters is key to maintaining sovereignty. The time to act is now. Make the necessary corrections and take control over how the system classifies you. Next steps: putting this into action. 1. Audit your current address usage. Go through all records and documents where your residential address is listed. 2. Update institutions if necessary. Ensure that your estate's mailing location is properly structured and recognized. 3. Continue learning and implementing. Study estate administration, trust law, and UCC processes to strengthen your sovereignty. Final thought: your address is your first line of defense. If you do not control your mailing location, the system will assume control over you. If you apply these principles, you will have taken a major step toward legal and financial sovereignty. Now that you have the knowledge, what will you do with it? If you need personalized guidance on structuring your estate and legal status, book a consultation. Visit shayspeakstruth.com, shayspeakstruth.com/ and click the Calendly button. To access my private resource library for legal templates and nationality guidance, send a $25 donation to CashApp mpresshaymarie, PayPal shayspeakstruth@gmail.com. Check out my t-shirt line and grab the My Nationality is Moroccan, not Black, not African American, not Moorish American, not Indian shirt, available at shayspeak.com/. Now that you have the truth, the only question is, what will you do with it? Peace, love, and light.